YouTube Ozick going the Goat House is back after week 15 in the NFL. Playoffs on the line. I got some takeaways. Did this video actually a little differently than previously. Placed teams in the tiers. Talked about the teams that were really impressive and significantly impacted their playoff chances, or teams that, were really disappointing, biggest losers on the week. So somewhat similar to the way we did it before. Not going to touch on every team here, but join us for our weekly content. We still have a Monday Night Football game, so join us on Twitter. We'll be talking during that. Like, subscribe to Notifications, follow us on Twitter. I just said that. And then check out our sponsors, Liquid IV, GLD Shop. Links pinned in the comments. So we got tiers here. The biggest winners, like the giant winners. These teams really, really impressed me on top of really helping their playoff chances. Buccaneers got to be the biggest winner of the day because impressive win against the Packers. I was pretty confident with the Packers just because of the matchup. When the Packers win, it's when Jordan Love plays his game. He really gets going. The Buccaneers' pass defense has really been struggling. And if the Bucs won, I thought, because the Packers' weakness was stopping the run, I thought because the Bucs would run wild, but they won with the pass. They won throwing the football. Baker Mayfield was outstanding in this game. Chris Godwin was obviously a problem for Green Bay, and they were effective on in every way, and honestly, they probably could have won this game by even more. They had that, the one mistake Baker made, that strip sack after they just stopped the Packers on fourth down, so the Packers end up scoring right after that, so kind of spotted them some points there, gave them some points, but they were effective pretty much everywhere. Yeah, they let the Packers throw on them a little bit. Tucker Kraft seemed to be a guy that was getting open, but honestly, they were actually a little bit, they were better than expected against the pass. Not that they were great, but on top of that, the Falcons lost to the Panthers. So last week, the Bucs just beating the Falcons, big winner, but I thought everything was on schedule still. I expected them to split. Looking at the rest of the schedules, it still kind of favored the Falcons in my opinion, even though the Bucs at that point had the tiebreaker. But then this week, the Falcons play the Panthers, the Bucs play the Packers, and then for the Bucs to win and the Falcons to lose, it puts the Bucs controlling their own destiny here and being the likely, the favorite to win the South. So they are absolute massive winners on the day. Along with the Buffalo Bills, I had a feeling, I was oddly confident with the Bills being the Cowboys. I think mainly because, they're kind of clicking into playoff mode. They're home. The Cowboys have struggled away. They just played 3 straight games at home. Got to go to the cold weather with that Bills Mafia, and the Bills are playing great. I was just oddly confident with the Bills, and it kind of worked out because I didn't think the Bills were going to dominate like that. The refs were wild in that game. I thought they were bad. I don't want to sit here and say they favored. I mean, they did kind of favor. I thought the Bills a little bit, but everything wasn't going the Bills' way. They had, I don't know, a lot of questionable calls. Even when blowing the whistle and letting plays go, little things like that. But the Bills, either way, the Bills dominated this game. James Cook was fantastic. I mean, he looked like prime Dalvin Cook. The way he saw the hole, hit the hole, the moves he had after the hole. I mean, that's what you look for in a running back. Can they see the hole, hit the hole? Can they hit the hole? What could they do after the hole? That's what I look for a running back. That's how I find the special ones. And it looked like prime Dalvin Cook, who was one of the best running backs in football, and James Cook. And the way he catches the ball is crazy, So he's been great. He's been that X factor for the Buffalo Bills. Defense looked better than expected in this game. Josh Allen's been great, kind of making his case for that MVP perhaps, which, maybe a few weeks ago, a little bit more, we thought maybe that wasn't a chance. So, and the Bills pretty much had to win out, not technically, but they're going out there, they're playing playoff football. They look like maybe the most dangerous team in the AFC right now at this given moment, maybe besides the Ravens. So, I mean, just a massive, massive winner at the right time of the year. And the Lions been struggling. They just have not looked like the Detroit Lions. Although I did expect them to win this game because home Saturday Night Football, but the matchup definitely favored them with the run game. We talked about the Broncos' run defense being very bad. But I thought they looked more like the Lions, like the fire, the energy, the way they play. They go out there and dominate the Broncos. They go out there and dominate. So we were talking about they look like a really good football team through a portion of the season, more than half the season. They didn't look so good then. And it's at the wrong time of the year, but I kind of mentioned it. Could they get back on track at the perfect time of the year, right before the playoffs? And it's still to be determined. We had a few weeks left and we got the playoffs, but That's a pretty good sign. Like for them to be playing, that well. It's one game, but to, like look like the Lions from earlier in the year. I know the matchup favored them, but do you think they'd be able to handle the Vikings both games? So I think this is a good look for the Lions going into those games and into the playoffs, winning that division. Jahmyr Gibbs was great. I thought Jared Goff played better. That's the thing. We expect them to win because the run game was going to be there, but the passing game was there. It just felt like the Lions from earlier in the year, so that was great. Teams that I view as big winners, right just behind the biggest winners, Bengals, Colts, and Saints. These teams are big winners because this is really big for their playoff chances, these wins. And they were impressive, too. They were somewhat impressive. I thought there's a little bit more from those top three teams, but the Bengals like look like they weren't going to win that game, and they come back and win. The Vikings defense has been shutting down teams like crazy, and then for them to score 3 straight possessions was insane. That's crazy. So that's huge. They look really good in the comeback. Helps their they have to have that win for their playoff chances. I think the one negative, maybe what's keeping them from being biggest winners, is they got beat up in that game, like injury-wise, like durability. Like DJ Reader's going to be done for the year. I mean, that's huge. It's going to be easier for teams to run. We saw Ty Chandler run for 130 plus, so that could be that slight thing, and what affects them maybe the one game or 2 games here and there that makes them maybe keeps them out of the playoffs. And Jamar Chase was banged up at the end of this game. So that's the thing, like kind of the outlook, for the playoff push. Like, will those, they're just injured. They're really injured. Will those things affect them? Colts went and took care of business like we expected against Trubisky, maybe a little bit more than expected. They were really solid in this game. I love that drive, that super long drive. They ran the ball every play and they just drained that clock. Not too many teams can do that. But for some reason in today's era, it's what I've been saying the last few weeks. Some good teams too. Like not too many coaches, like play callers, want to do that for some reason. Like the teams that used to be the dream. Like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that was the dream. Like to have those drive. Every coach wanted those drives in the beginning of the game, middle of the game, end of the game in the Colts situation, But now all of a sudden the era changed where it's a passing league. Obviously it's a passing league, and the crazy passing quarterbacks win you ball games. But I think that's kind of brainwashed some of these play callers. I think it's like it makes them think. Well, first off, teams are hiring those types of coaches where it's just pass. But also it's brainwashed these coaches where like we have to pass to win. No. Like, if you are able to run against the team, that is the easiest path to victory. You can control the clock. You can hold the ball. You can keep their offense on the sideline, keep them cold, and win the football game. It is an easy path to victory. It's a dominant path to victory. And the teams that still are able to do it, I don't want the teams that only do that, though. I want the teams that can mix that in and do it when the time is right. And there's a lot of coordinators, a lot of coaches out there that are good ones, but they just insist. They're stuck in their ways, and when you branch out and do these things, it looks good, and it kind of goes back on Shane Steichen. We love that hire at the time. He's been great all year. It's a reason the Colts have 8 wins. The biggest reason the Colts have 8 wins right now. Players are obviously stepping up, and they were without, obviously, Taylor going into this game at Moss, and then Moss during this game, most of this game, throughout those drives, Goodson and Sermon. I mean, that's crazy. So, big win for the Colts. I mean, they had to get that win for their playoff chances because they got some tough games. Not the toughest games, but they got, they're not the easiest games coming up. Not like some of the other games they're playing there. They had fairly easy. They had a favorable schedule. See if they can finish it off. But we expected them to do that, though. But against the Steelers and Trubisky, but they get the job done. And the Saints, I was impressed. I picked the Saints to win, but I thought that was a 50-50 game. And then, honestly, I woke up on Sunday and I saw Chris Olave was out. I'm like, man, do I switch this? I'm like, no, I'm going to go with the Saints. But man, oh man, this is truly 50-50. And the Giants have been playing really good football. And the Saints go out there and dominate them. I know the Giants have been dealing with injuries, and then the DeVito situation within the game was right before half, obviously. But the Saints got guys out. They've been dealing with injuries. Olave's out. I thought this probably was Derek Carr's best game. A stout Giants defense that's been red hot. And I thought the ball placement, the timing of throws, the throws downfield without Chris Olave. And there's been maybe some connection situation with him, kind of him hollering at Olave at times. So it makes you wonder. But come on, it's the best receiver on the team. And they're already beat up. They're missing other guys as well. I thought this was great from Derek Carr. I thought this was honestly I don't think I looked at the stats. I didn't look at the stats, but I don't know if they were crazy. I'm guessing he played better than what the stats show. I'm going to guarantee he played better. Like if you watch, I didn't see every single snap obviously, but I imagine if you watched every single snap, you probably can agree with that. And the Saints defense did their job. They let up some big plays here and there. There was actually a lot of that where we thought like the Giants were moving. They make a big play, Waller, DeVito on the run, maybe Barkley here and there, but they get a big play into Saints territory, and it's like, uh-oh, here come the Giants. It kept happening, but then the Saints would make a big play to push them out of field goal range or whatever, or maybe stop them to a field goal, and they controlled this game. So that was better than expected. I was impressed with. I thought that probably not statistically, but I thought that was Derek Carr's. I'll say it's his most impressive game. Maybe it wasn't his best game. It could have been, but to me, my opinion, like what I look for, and I know the Giants is not the biggest team in the world, but that defense has been playing very, very well. Given all that, most impressive game. And then other winners, we're not going to be able to talk about every single one. I did change this. I apologize. I changed this video up a little bit. Other teams were impressive. Like the Niners are impressive. The Chiefs got back and track. The Panthers pull off a win. It's just there really isn't a whole lot of significance in those, in my opinion. The Texans, man, they come back and they beat the Titans. It was sloppy. It didn't look good. That's okay because they were missing not only C.J. Stroud but a lot of starters. But that like the Texans are up here because that's just a big win to stay alive. Because they were on track to make the playoffs, and if they lost that game, they probably weren't, or maybe were. It's like a little closer, but they control their own destiny still at this point. So. That's a huge win. Huge come from behind win. It really wasn't pretty. The Titans honestly should have won that game. Missed extra point, dropped interceptions. And there's a flag to take them out of field goal range in overtime. There was a flag that took away the Texans touchdown. That was after the point. So things definitely bounced the Texans away throughout this game, but they kind of needed them to. They were missing their star quarterback, and they're without Tank Dell for the whole season, but technically they're missing their two best receivers with Nico Collins as well, missing Will Anderson. And the Browns that come from behind win. Another one, they probably should have lost this game. And I'm not really talking about the Hail Mary. I just thought the Bears outplayed them for most of this game, but they clutched up. David Njoku was great. Joe Flacco had one of the throws of the season. Like, he was struggling. And that throw to Amari Cooper, that you could argue that was the throw of the season. I don't know. I got to kind of go look at some other ones. But the significance of the throw as well. Threw him open in traffic. Perfect placement. My God. Like that throw gives me goosebumps. Like how significant and how big it was. And they find a way to win the game. The defense started making stops at the end as well. Some clutch stops. It felt like they were definitely going to lose this game. And it's like the Bears muffed that punt. It's like, oh, maybe not. And then Flacco throws an interception in the red zone. It's like, okay. Game's got to be over. But no, they pull off a win. It's just huge for playoffs. It's huge for the playoff chances. The Ravens, I wasn't overly thrilled with the Ravens in this game, to be honest, but they clinched the playoffs. I was thrilled with after Agnew had that wide open touchdown for the Jags. I thought from there on out, the Ravens outplayed the Jags. There was actually questions about that before that point. Like all from the start all the way up to Agnew's touchdown, it's like, I think the better argument was the Jags probably were outplaying the Ravens. They were just shooting themselves in the foot, whatever. And it reminded me of the Chargers game for the Ravens, which was actually a few weeks ago, maybe a little bit more. It was a primetime game as well. And it felt like, the Ravens weren't doing much. The defense was making plays, but the Chargers were kind of just shooting themselves in the feet over and over again. And they actually had an opportunity to win at the end. Not that it really got that close on that last drive. It just kind of reminded me of that, where I was like, okay, Ravens won. Am I overly impressed? Because they high standards, high expectations from the Ravens. It was kind of like that for a bit. But I thought, again, after that Agnew touchdown, I was impressed. You're not crazy impressed because that's what I expect from the Ravens. But what I was disappointed in was the receivers. They need an outside receiver really bad because the Jags are pretty. Zay Flowers is more of a slot receiver that he's weird. He's had a weird rookie year, like statistically, and if you're watching highlights, he's looked really, really good. But he'll disappear sometimes, and he kind of relies sometimes, not all the time, on those gadget play or like the screen passes, the underneath play, just after the catch ability. So I wish he was more involved in this game, but usually it's the outside receivers that beat up the Jags, and that was OBJ, and he had a drop early, and then he was injured. He's out there, back there holding his ankle, Achilles, calf. I don't know. I don't think it's anything serious, but so I the lack of like consistency from the outside. Isaiah Likely was sensational, I thought. Lamar was great on the ground. Oh, he was great on the ground. And I thought he clutched up at the end to kind of make it where the Ravens are outplaying the Jags. But they need a consistent outside receiver pretty badly. Like Aguilar's been playing a mixture of slot inside. Zay Flowers, same thing. He's or slot outside, same thing. He's more of a slot receiver. That's where he does better. So, yeah. Rams, I mean, it was a must-win. I've been saying it. I've been hyped on the Rams for even losing to the Ravens last week, like 6-7 going into this week. I'm like, it's the best 6-7 team I've seen. This team belongs in the playoffs. Like it's a top 7 team in the NFC, and they can actually maybe win a playoff game. You never know, maybe more if they get in. And they look good throughout most of this game, but then a little bit of a scare. Jacoby Brissett comes in and they start making a push. But so we don't want that from the Rams, but they looked explosive. They were doing their thing for most of this game. The offense and the defense looked pretty solid. They could have done a little more. Raiders, I mean, doing that, I know it was the Chargers without Justin Herbert, but doing that, putting up that many points, looking like a dominant team, it puts you in some sort of win. Like how much of an impact is it going to make on the rest of the year? Not a whole lot, but it means something. And it kind of gives you a better feel for Antonio. Well, maybe also it's kind of like a roller coaster on what your decision for what Antonio Pierce is going to be. It's like it was starting to go downhill. Like, maybe we look elsewhere. Like now it's like, all right, maybe we got to keep him. See what happens the rest of the year. And the Dolphins win 30-0. That's big without Tyreek Hill. Some injuries, several injuries actually. That's pretty big. And the Jets kind of stepped up last week, so maybe it was like a little bit of a like maybe it's a little scary here, but no. I know the Jets were dealing with something with the quarterback too, but injury throughout the game with Zach Wilson. But Dolphins go take care of business. I just need to see them beat good teams now. They'll have that opportunity. It's a big opportunity going into the playoffs, the next 3 games. And they got to hold on to that AFC East, actually. If a few weeks ago, I felt like, all right, if like they don't win it, the division, it might be an absolute choke, and there's an opportunity here. So it is. It's got to be good teams when you play good teams. So they're going to go out and do that. They're going to go out and prove that. So excited to watch that and just learn more about. There's still teams I want to learn more, like going into the playoffs. We just got biggest losers and big losers. I mean, the NFC North. The Lions are on the biggest winners column, and the rest of the NFC North here. Let's talk about the Falcons first. I mean, the Falcons. Last week, I said it last week, it's tough. Like, you had an opportunity to beat the Bucs, you lose, but I didn't really say that was a big loss because it was right on schedule. It was right. I did playoff predictions a couple weeks ago. I showed like the schedule, my scenarios. I had the Falcons losing to the Bucs in that game, but I had the Falcons winning the division at that point still, even with that loss, because I thought the rest of the schedules favored them. Bucs playing the Packers, bad matchup. The Falcons playing the Panthers. Not that it's free, even though it should be. They have 1 win, but I knew the Panthers' defense was a little scary. But the Falcons should win that game. The Bucs, maybe Packers take care of business, but the opposite for both happens. And the Falcons were in position to win this game. Bijan fumble was tough, but they're in position to win the game. Ritter throws yet another interception in the red zone, and the Panthers go win without scoring a touchdown. So that is brutal. It's tough. So now the Bucs are just in the driver's seat there, and the Falcons got to do something special. So it's a pretty solid team. It's just Ritter continues to turn the ball over in bad moments, in the red zone, and they just couldn't do enough. Obviously, Packers. Either the matchup favored them. Defense was atrocious. Obviously. Besides the strip sack, honestly thought there was going to be more. I don't think it's all on the defense. People are talking like it's for just only the defense, and I do think most of it is that way. But I actually expected more from more consistency. Like, they moved the ball. They had production. But I expected more consistency, better execution, more points to stay in this game. And they didn't really have that against very much a struggling pass defense. So this was pretty much a must-win to either the matchup favored them at home. Baker Mayfield has the best passer rating ever in Lambeau Field. That's crazy. It's crazy. Poor tackling, just poor play in general. I mean, the offense did something at least, but so that leaves them on the outside of the playoffs looking in. And the Vikings are still the 6th seed somehow. I don't think they're the 6th best team in the NFC. I actually think they're better than. I don't know if they're better right now. They're probably not better than the Bucs, but there's teams on the outside that are better than them. But I mean, you can't lose that game. I thought People probably want to argue with me, but I don't really complain about like people. I think the most complaint about thing like officials is like PI, no PI, and I don't really like those things are hard to call. I had a big problem with the spotting of the ball. This from start to finish. Like there's plays where they're 2 yards off spotting, and it could have been on both teams. But with that being said, the Vikings choked this game. Like they absolutely cannot let this game get away. You look at the production. Like Mullins had some bad turnovers, but he 300 yards. Ty Chandler ran for 130 plus. Addison, Jefferson, Hawkinson, they caught the ball extremely well. They had big time plays. Defense made stops for most of this game, but it's weird that they allowed things in clutch plays. 3rd and 21, 4th down. They had mix in the backfield. That jump ball to T. Higgins that should have been picked off. Just little like take away one of those plays, you win the game. So that's pretty brutal. Like if they won that game, they were sitting pretty. Because they're still the 6th seed. So, but they choked that game away. The Bears, they choked as well. The other NFC North team. They outplayed the Browns for most of this game. They had a bad drop early. Tunyon, that was an all-timer. That was an all-time drop. Good throw. Like moments like that. But even like they still had control. They still had control of this game. They muffle punts. Like, do they have? I thought they had control. Do they? They get a pick. Like, okay, they have control. They had a pick 6, obviously. So only 1 touchdown on offense. And the defense kind of, they had a problem with Njoku, and they had that big play to Cooper. These are just really good offensive plays. I know the defense could be better in the end, but it's not on the defense. The offense has to execute. They had some 3rd downs, 4th downs. They got to execute. Like, Fields played an all right game. It's kind of been a common theme, though, like executing and close out games at the end of games, and that's kind of been the situation there. That's kind of the big debate on if they go with Fields. I don't think it's that much of a debate, to be honest. To go with Fields or to draft a quarterback at the end of the year, it seems to be a big debate, though, because like he looks like he's got all the talent in the world. Like no one's ever saying, like especially me, that he doesn't have arm talent. We always knew he had arm talent. We always knew he had legs. We always knew he was strong. We always knew, these things like he has a talent inside him somewhere. A lot of it is up here. But closing out games, the 2 biggest things, like executing, closing out big moments, games, whatever. And then can he play a full season because the durability? And he's coming to an end of his contract. So do you risk that? Not take quarterback, go with him? Like, what do you got to pay him? Then get a guy that's probably going to be, chances are probably going to be better starting on his rookie contract. I think it's a no-brainer there. Fields, to me, played better than Flacco, but Flacco closed the game out. So it depends on which way you look at it. So that's a tough one because the Bears, there was some real talk that they can make the playoffs. Like, I didn't think it was going to happen, but go on. And they do have a favorable schedule the rest of the way. If they won that game, like, it was a decent shot. Like, catch the Packers, they still can. And then catch the Vikings, if they won that game. Get ahead of those teams, possibly make the playoffs. So there was some people like, I live in Chicago. I listen to sports radio. Like they really thought it was happening. So that is a big letdown when they had that game pretty much wrapped up. And to talk about chokes, we got 3 in a row here. Vikings, Bears, Titans. The Titans probably the worst one. I don't know about that. Vikings and Bears are the worst in terms of they could have made the playoffs if they won that game. The Vikings technically you could still predict. I don't think they're going to make it, but the Titans, probably weren't going to make it, but now they're eliminated. But why it's the worst is because they're playing a depleted Texans team. No C.J. Stroud, no top 2 receivers. You have a 13-0 lead. Things are going your way, and you can't close it out. You can't catch interceptions. The offensive line can't block. Levis taking sacks. DeAndre Hopkins couldn't do shit against his old team. Derrick Henry had 0.6 yards per carry. That's got to be an all-timer low for Derrick Henry. But then it gets to overtime. The better team should win in overtime. Yes, the Texans are the better team, but not with the players that were on the field on that day yesterday. Titans were the better team, but they didn't end up the better team. So pretty pathetic if you ask me. That's a tough one. And to round it off here with other big losers, the Jags at borderline. Biggest losers, big losers. That's 3 in a row. Sloppy. They did play the Ravens, though. And, honestly, if they weren't so sloppy and didn't shoot themselves in the feet. I don't know what to say in that. Shoot themselves in the foot or shoot themselves in the feet. I don't know which one it is. I don't know why. I'm having a hard time with that. All video. But if the Jags didn't do that, they might win the game. They might outplay the hottest AFC team in football, the Ravens. So that's the one thing tiny thing they got going for them. But my issue is they look like the beginning of the year Jacksonville Jaguars. Where in the beginning of the year, I wasn't really worried because what do I say every year? I'm probably the spokesperson of this. Like, the beginning of the year means nothing. Like, wins and losses, it will matter at the end of the year, obviously, but takeaways, how a team looks, you cannot base the rest of the season off, based on what you see in the beginning of the year. So I really wasn't worried, but they were like highly inconsistent, very sloppy, not that good of a team. And all of a sudden something clicked and they were rolling. They were beating some good teams. They looked good. Like, okay, here's the Jaguars. Now they're back to looking in the beginning of the year. And it's like, is it going to happen again? Like, they're going to cut it out and they're going to go back to looking good? The perfect time of the year, right at the end of the season. It's kind of the big time of the year here. But into the playoffs, first they got to make it. I would expect them to. But very, very sloppy. We thought maybe going this year, could they be more of a, like, everyone thought they were somewhat of a contender, but there was some of us that thought, like, could they take the next step and be more of a contender? I don't think they're there yet. Doesn't feel like they're there yet. Like, I think they'd be based on this last three. I think they're better than the last 3 games they played. They're better than that. I think they might show it. I think it's in there. They could show it at week 16, whatever. Playoffs, they could actually show it. It would not surprise me. But can they make that run to the Super Bowl? I just don't see how that's possible. The Broncos, I did expect them to lose this game because the matchup Saturday night in Detroit, they can't stop the run. We've been preaching that. They can't stop the run. They're probably a little bit better now than they were earlier in the year because it was really, really bad early in the year. But they're a bottom 3 team stopping the run. I think statistically they're the worst. Are they actually? It's a different debate. I think they're a bottom 3. So we expect them to lose. I didn't expect them to get dominated like this, but it kind of goes back to what I was saying while they were winning. People want to call me a hater. Like I said, the Broncos were getting a little lucky. They rely on getting interceptions. They were better. I never said they weren't better than they were earlier in the year. They're an impressive team. Like, Russ is playing much better than last year. I think he can make bigger plays, bigger moments down the field. But he is playing better. Courtland Sutton, I'm a huge Courtland Sutton guy. I'm a big Javonte Williams guy. I do want more from him. Offensive line's been solid. Defensively, they're making plays. They got stud guys here and there. Really, the big weakness is there enough, is there enough big plays, like takeover plays from in the passing game? It's a small negative, but mainly the run defense. So I was in agreement the whole time. They're better. They're a decent team. You don't want to play the Broncos. Like, not everyone, like, they're tough. They're physical. I even said elite physicality, but during that time while they were winning, I said they're a little lucky. They're relying on turnovers to win games, and it's not me. I don't hate anybody. I'm a diehard Vikings fan. I don't hate the Packers. I don't hate the Bears. I don't love them. I definitely don't love them. But in the Lions, you got to throw the Lions. For some reason, it's always been a bigger rival game. The Packers mainly within the Bears rival, but. I don't hate anybody, so that wasn't me hating. It's just me. I think I know what I'm talking about. It looks like I knew what I was talking about. Like the Broncos, that's why they're big losers. They rely, they must get turnovers to win games. Like, usually good teams could win games without the turnovers. But if you look at all the games this year, they have 2 wins where they don't get 2 or more turnovers. Think about that. They need to get 2 or all the other wins. They actually have 3+. I think 1 is 2. So basically, they have to get multiple turnovers to win, for the most part, to beat at least good teams, to win games. That's what it is. That's what it is right now. It doesn't mean they're not a good team. It does not mean they're not a good team. I mean, they're a good team, and they're tough. I mean, they ran into a bad time to play the Lions. Saturday Night Football in Detroit when they're pissed off. Bad matchup, So this isn't deciding everything for me for the Broncos. But what I've been saying is definitely true. Like, so far, their identity is a much improved team that is pretty damn good, very, very physical. I love the toughness. I love the way they play. I love the improvement, but they rely on turnovers, and turnovers are always going to be fortunate. Not always. You're always going to have fortunate lucky turnovers. Sometimes it's skill, but they're relying on multiple turnovers to win big football games. I think that's a problem. And they could still make the playoffs. They could definitely still make the playoffs. Not saying otherwise. Steelers, Trubisky's freaking awful. The run defense is awful. There's a little effort. I'm not happy with what I've been seeing from Pickens and Johnson, but doesn't help that Trubisky's pretty bad. But still, it doesn't have anything to do with it. Give your full effort. So not happy with that. The play calling's been bad. I know it's Trubisky, but it's been really, really bad. Really bad. I don't know. It's been worse, I think. But again, hard to compare. One guy had Pickett. One guy's got Trubisky. So even though Pickett wasn't the greatest, it is a big difference. And Pickett's closing out games. Give him that. We'll give him that. Run defense is atrocious. I mean, not Jonathan Taylor, not Zach Moss, Tyler Goodson, and Trey Sermon, who've been bouncing around practice squads. That's pretty brutal. It shouldn't be this bad. I was confident with the Colts winning. Line was only 2.5. It actually went all the way down to 1 before kickoff. So technically the game is supposed to be closer than that. And they get a good lead to start. Things are going their way. I forget about that too. So it's bad. It's bad. And things went their way all year. They're in position to make the playoffs, and you can't, easy schedule. Come on now. Cowboys, I think most people's takeaway would be like they can't play against great teams. I think they could. It's maybe a bold take for me because they got their ass kicked to the Bills. They got their ass kicked to 49ers. They don't have a long stretch the last couple of years of beating good teams. They beat up a couple. They beat up the Vikings last year. I remember that. Didn't like that as a fan. And all the Vikings were overrated last year. I agree they were lucky, but they still won 13 games. They were a good team. Besides the point, Cowboys could beat good teams. I think they can hang with good teams. My issue is they stink away, and that is a big reason I picked the Bills. I didn't know they stunk that bad away. Stunk that big. They were 3-3 away. They had 3 straight. They got to go play in the cold. Good team. I can't play good teams away. They for sure can't play good teams away. That we'll put it at that. So they pretty much have to win their division, get that 1 seed, and losing a game like that might be tough. I think the Seahawks could beat the Eagles tonight, depending on who plays quarterback for both teams. That could give the Cowboys some help, but I still think the Eagles probably can win that division. They probably will. The rest of that schedule, they're quite the difference between the Cowboys and the Eagles. The rest of the schedule after tonight, so yeah, it's tough. So it kind of says some things about the playoffs. Like I thought there was a realistic shot, and I still think there is. The Cowboys go to the NFC Championship game, but man, if they in the divisional round, if they have to play a solid team away, I mean, they're probably gonna be playing a team away in the first round. But it's gonna be the Bucks. It's gonna be the Bucks. You would expect the Cowboys to win. How many times are the Cowboys gonna play the Bucks? I feel like that happens a lot. Well, I guess the NFC East. You've seen the Eagles play the Bucks and the Cowboys play the Bucks. Yeah, I don't feel like it's happened a lot in the playoffs. Anyways, it's because the NFC South that you say are bad, and they end up playing. Yeah, what it is. They should win that game, and they're gonna have to go on the road again. Divisional round. Like how much can we trust them now? Not much. In the Giants, I know injuries and things really aren't going their way, but a shot to keep it alive. The season alive, and they've been playing good football, and I thought this was a decent matchup where I picked the Saints, but I thought it could be really, really close. And I wake up and I hear Olave's out. It's like, man, Giants can really win this game because their defense, and Barkley, and but they let Derek Carr play maybe the most impressive, like I said, most impressive game of the year for him so far. So that was surprising. So they kind of fell off a little bit. They moved the ball, but then as soon as they got into Saints territory or near, they kind of choked a little bit. They kind of folded. So. They aren't the biggest losers, but just disappointing. Even though I didn't expect them to win, disappointing there. So, I changed this up a little bit. I like the tiers. I didn't talk about every single team, but not every fan base is watching at that point. That's how it happens every year. Some fan bases don't really get that interested in like a non-significant week for their team. So, decided to switch it up, make it a little more exciting, go like this. Let me know your guys' thoughts on that in the comments. If you think I missed on touchdown, I apologize, but let me know in the comments. Always talking with you guys on Twitter, though. Yeah, I usually respond to everyone unless it's pure stupidity. Sometimes I give you some stupidity back, but that will wrap it up. Cannot wait for our weekly coverage. We always add a random video. Like 2 weeks ago was a mock draft. Last week was a coaching video. A week before was a coaching video as well. Maybe a free agency. Look ahead to that. We always do that. Still got to vote for Pro Bowl. Things like that. We always add that in the normal content. So join us. Like, subscribe, turn over. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.